الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على النبي المصطفى الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي بنعمته تتم الصالحات أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, we have reached the point with the history of Palestine and the existence of the Jewish people in Palestine and the Palestine territory when we came to the destruction of Solomon's temple. And we said when the Babylonians invaded Jerusalem, and when it was the year 586-87, they besieged the city. And we have learned that Nebuchadnezzar has put the entire city into raze. It was completely burned, destroyed, including the temple. There is no sign for the temple after that moment anymore. There is no sign for the taboot or the ark anymore after that point. We came to that idea, and we knew that the Babylonians took almost 10,000 to 20,000 Jewish people captive to Babylon, Al-Iraq, and they were enslaved there. The rest who stayed in Jerusalem around the area of the temple, they were most likely the poor Jewish people who cannot go here or there. They were not from the royal family. None of the Jewish army leaders, they were in existence before. And some of the Jewish people also moved to Egypt. So by that time, again, the year 587 BCE, there is no sign for any kind of power of the Jewish people, not in Palestine, even in Jerusalem. There is no sign for the temple of Sulaiman to happen in the same area, in the same region of Palestine and its territories. The birth of new power emerged. And this military power, they were the Persian at that time. They invaded Babylon. And this is the time of Cyrus the Great, Koresh. They say it in Hebrew or in Arabic, and this character is very famous, by the way, in the Old Testament. The Jewish people are very loving to the Cyrus the Great. Why? Cyrus the Great, when he took the leadership of this empire, the Persian Empire, he did great things to the Jews. He allowed the Jews, they were taken captive to Babylon after the Persian invasion to the city of Babylon. He let them go back to Jerusalem. So first of all, he let them have the right to go back to resettle again in Jerusalem, which was forbidden before in the time of the Babylonians. Yes. And more than this, it seems that Cyrus the Great, or Koresh, he was a great person. They are talking about the Bill of Rights, something like what we are talking about in the United States, the freedom of religion. He let them go back, and he let them rebuild the temple. So the temple of Solomon is going to be rebuilt, but this time not by Solomon, and the ark is not there anymore. But some of them, it seemed that, some of the Jewish people, seemed that they got some of the treasures of the old temple. So whoever got something of these treasures, they put it in the new temple. So the new temple, or the second temple, has been established by the Jew. Yes, that's right. And they had the right to practice Judaism freely. So they were lucky to be under the leadership of the Persian people at that time. But I want to emphasize something. First of all, they did not rule Palestine. They did not even rule the entire city of Jerusalem. I mean, the Jews did not do that. They were practicing having that kind of autonomous governance. They have that kind of self-determination, especially in two aspects: the judgment and the religious affairs. That's it. So they were not controlling Palestine again, never have happened at that time. No, they returned it back. They were very, very limited in a very limited space in Jerusalem. They didn't even govern the entire city of Jerusalem. It was most likely the area of the new temple that has been established for the second time. So this is just to make sure they didn't come to Palestine as invaders, no. They came back to resettle, to get the temple rebuilt, and they started practicing their Judaism. That's it. And subhanAllah, they stayed there. That was, I think, it was the Persian emerged and overcome the Babylonian in the year 539 BCE. Yeah, around that area. So I want to remind you that new temple has been rebuilt around the year 520 BCE. So there is no Jerusalem as a city at all for almost 60 years at that time. Just to make sure when we are talking about their right to go back, no, we have to be clear. And today my talk is gonna be actually based on history more than anything else. I don't wanna grab anything from the Old Testament because I wanna be away from any kind of change they have made, okay? Because actually at that time too, you can say the Torah that they have right now, it started, or the Old Testament, it started to be documented and written, not before that. So one of the information that, or a piece of information we should know is that Torah, in the sense that they are talking about, or the Old Testament, they started collecting these material almost 700 years after Moses, peace be upon him, not before that. And by the way, they didn't have something, because if you remember, we said the main Torah, the Al-Alwah, was in the ark, and they lost it. So what they wrote, it has been always written by their hakams, by their religious characters. And they were written separate, pieces. And they say, having that collection of the Old Testament took 400 years of the Jewish people to write these things. So the Torah, the Old Testament we are talking about is not, don't think about the Quran. It's not the revelation. It is the story of their life. Even if you talk about Solomon, you talk about the kings, they are talking about, in the Old Testament, about the years after Moses, alayhi salam, telling the story of their nation after that, of their people after that. So the Torah or the Old Testament, they have some of the Torah, that's right. But even some people may think that change happened, they got that Torah, they have already that Torah, and they changed it. No. They just created that Torah from their own memories, from their own minds, and they created everything in the Torah. There are something taken from the original, yes, that's right, but even what we have in the Old Testament is a kind of a life story, I would call it in that way, okay? So this is just, then, subhanAllah, they kept in that kind of prosperous life to practice their religion until the Persian people or the Persian Empire is gonna be out of that vision now. And Alexander the Great is gonna come. It was the year 332, 333 BCE. And now it's the emergence of the Greek Empire. With Alexander the Great, they kept having that kind of self-determination or autonomous to govern themselves. Again, especially in two things. What are they? Religion and judgment. That's great. And they keep doing that. They didn't have an empire. The only empire, as we said in the Golden Era episode, was only the 90 to 100 years, only at the time of David and Solomon, peace be upon them. That's it. All what happened until Jesus, peace be upon him, is gonna be born, they are practicing their religion in the second temple or close to the second temple, but they do not have control over Palestine. They are not the people who are the only people living in Palestine. That was not true. This is not true completely. Even, by the way, the historian said most of the Jewish people stayed in Babylon, even after Cyrus the Great gave them the chance to come back, because they had some kind of financial stability there. So they usually do like to leave the places where they are financially stable. And even, I don't know, it may not be a surprise to know that the number of the Jewish people living in the United States are actually more than the number of the people they are living in Israel. Millions more. So, subhanAllah. But anyway, we will go to finish this episode very quickly. And I will say, after the Greek, the Roman came. And before moving to the Roman area, I want to tell you that even at the time of the Greeks, the Jewish people were forced in a specific era to worship some of the Greeks' idols, especially Zeus. They were forced to do it. And they got a lot of culture from the Greek culture. They mixed that. And of course, they have divisions, and the people said, no, we cannot leave Judaism. This is, yeah, they have that. But there are a faction of people, they took these Greek culture and they embedded it into Judaism. And the word synagogue, by the way, appeared. So the word synagogue is taken from the Greek. So this is when the temple we are talking, Haikal Sulaiman, the synagogue is taken from the Greek. The Romans came, and we will come to the point, maybe I will say 15 years BCE, when it was Mary born. And almost 4 years BCE, 4 years before the birth of Isa alayhi salam, it was actually, they have Zechariah and Yahya, and we will come after Jesus. We'll have 3 prophets at that time. They were Zechariah, Yahya, John the Baptist, and Isa, Jesus, peace be upon him. And we know that, I think 3 months, John the Baptist or Yahya alayhi salam is older than Isa alayhi salam, only 3 months. So he was born just 3 months. If you remember, we said many prophets even came to the Jewish people at the same time. At that time of Isa alayhi salam, you will know that we have 3 prophets at the same time. Along that way, the history to finish was who was taking care of the religious affairs. They appointed someone called the high priest. So the people to decide who is the high priest, actually many times it was the Romans and the Greek people to appoint who is the high priest. The high priest is the person who is living in the temple, who's leading the religious Judaism affairs, and he is the point, or he is the man in the Holy of the Holies, which is Quds Al-Aqdas. Inshallah, next time we will talk about the destruction after the second reconstruction of the building that called the temple or Haikal Sulaiman or that synagogue, and we will know the story of the destruction of the second temple at the time of the Romans too. اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين يا رب العالمين. اللهم احقن دماءهم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم احقن دماءهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم داوي جريحهم يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم كن لهم يا رب العالمين. مدهم بجندك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم وأنت القدير انصرهم بنصرك يا ربنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم اهزم أعداءهم. اللهم اهزم أعداءهم واهزم من عاون أعداءهم يا رب العالمين. وكن لهم لا يغلبون وأنت وليهم وأنت أكرم الأكرمين. أنت ربنا وأنت رب المستضعفين. امن علينا وعليهم بنصر من عندك يا أرحم الراحمين. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلاة وسلاما على المرسلين، وجزاكم الله خيرا.